I would like to make a few announcements. If you have your phone, please put it on silent. We don't want, while we into the program, the phone start to ring. And then the next thing, when you feed Jim, you want to ease yourself, the environment is back there. You got a female side on the right, the left side is the male side. So you can make use of the gents room just in case. While we're waiting back, you can just start by self introduction of the matter. So, when we start with self introduction, please let us stand and reference God. It's like 2 minutes. Silent prayer. If you are Christian or Muslim, please stand. Amen. Thank you very much. Have a seat. Was it too real to find? Then the next thing, I would like to recognize the birthday of one of our strong and hard-working DCOP, the person of Nicholas Jones, please. Happy birthday, Nicholas Jones. You are highly celebrated by C4 office. I want to say happy birthday. We wish you many prosperous years to come. And out of the celebration, please allow to be part of the celebrations.
Celebration only have good breakfast already.
Oh, damn. I would have been here content. And not forgetting about my own harvester, my church brother. He's a happy bar. I want to say happy birthday. We wish you many prosperous years and healthiest one to come as well. So, on this note, let me recognize our hard-working guests. I would like to recognize Honorable Tana G. Bronson, Deputy Minister for Budget and Development Planning. And I would like to recognize Mr. Wapo. He is the coordinator for the National Climate Change Secretariat at the Environmental Protection Agency. And I would like to recognize Director Emmanuel Williams, Director for Public Investment Management, the Project Investment Unit. I would like to recognize Mr. Ben Hallison, the Director for the Ministerial Delivery Unit in the Office of the Minister of Finance and Development Planning. And I would also like to recognize my own brother, Julius Braca, the Director for Policy Coordination, Budget Policy and Coordination Unit at the Department of Budget and Development Planning as well. And not forget my own boss, who had imposed his covenants in me that to serve the master of the ceremony, Mr. Policy Bayo, Senior Policy Advisor to the Deputy Minister for Development Planning, and the focal person when it comes to climate change in the Republic of Liberia. You recognize that? Go ahead. So let's jump into business. Today is the technical orientation workshop on climate budget hiking for fiscal year 2026 budget formulation on this day, July 4, 2025, at the Corina Hotel in Monrovia Liberia. Interested in today, you guys that love America, today is America's Independence Day, and we're having this powerful program just to inform you. So, we'd like to do a welcome and opening remarks by Honorable Tana G. Bronson, Deputy Minister for Budget and Development Planning, Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. You're welcome.
Good morning. I see so many familiar faces. I don't know why we have this meeting at the Ministry of Finance. But I'm glad to be here today. Distinguished colleagues. Oh, no development partners here, right? Okay. Our key ally from the Environmental Protection Agency, who's a friend of the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. It is a distinct honor for me to welcome all of you to this very important technical engagement. A workshop on climate budget tagging for the fiscal year 2026. Today marks not just another training or technical session, but a defining milestone in our collective efforts to position Liberia on the path of climate-responsive budgeting and sustainable development. Your presence here places you in a category of the first cohort, the pioneers of what will become a transformative shift in how our country plans, allocates, and monitors its public spending to respond to climate changes. Climate change is no longer a distant threat. It is here now. Like many developing countries, Liberia is on the front lines of changing climate, grappling with the unpredictable rainfall, coastal erosion, declining agricultural productivity, and displacement driven by climate crisis. But amidst the challenges lie opportunity to rethink how we finance our future in a sustainable manner by integrating climate consideration directly at the very heart of our budget process. This workshop, therefore, serves as an official inception of Liberia's first ever climate budget tagging system. A tool that will help us identify, track, and report public expenditures that contribute to both climate change adaptation and mitigation. This is not merely a technical exercise. It is a governance imperative aimed at enhancing transparency, accountability, and interagency coordination, and our eligibility for global climate financing. Ladies and gentlemen, within our mandate, the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning has a solemn duty to ensure that our budget not only delivers development, but that it does so in a way that is resilient, inclusive, and climate smart. That is why your roles today and moving forward are so important. You are the first batch of technical staff to be oriented on this new front. And because of that, you will be remembered as trailblazers, ambassadors, and eventually trainer of trainers, who will help us to scale up this effort across all ministries, agencies, and commissions. We recognize that this is a technically complex and new process. Therefore, we commit to continue capacity building, regular refresher training, and structured support mechanisms to ensure that you are not only equipped but empowered to lead. What starts today with 40 participants will in the near future expand over our entire budgeting landscape. As we go through the exercises today on the conceptual foundations of climate tagging, reviewing templates, and doing practical exercises, I urge you to see yourselves as not mere learners, but as leaders of a critical national transition. Your full participation, your curiosity, your questions, and mostly your commitment to the foundation will lay the foundation for what we build from here. On behalf of the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, our counterpart, the Environmental Protection Agency, and our development partners who always support us in initiatives like these. We want to extend our deepest appreciation to each of you for accepting the call to action. Again, let us approach this workshop with seriousness of purpose, urgency of mission, and the optimism for the future by embracing our roles, not just as technicians, but as guardians of the Liberian climate resilience through sound public finance. Thank you, and I wish you all fruitful deliberations in a solution-oriented spirit that you bring to this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. That was so succinct and powerful. If you were born in Liberia, you will come to realize that we have 9 coastal counties. It tells anybody about the danger of climate change issue that we face. And to address climate change is in twofold, through mitigation and adaptation. She said it, we look forward to addressing the issue through our smart climate change resilient projects. And I was so thrilled and happy that since 1847, this is the very first time we're going to have a smart budget climate tycoon. That's a huge milestone that we all need to celebrate together. Next on our agenda, we have special remarks from Mr. Zer Elijah Walpole. He's the National Coordinator for the National Climate Change Secretary and Environmental Agency. You're welcome. You're welcome, sir. Go ahead.
Madam Minister and platform guests, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just make small correction. I am the National Coordinator for the National Climate Change Secretariat, not of the EPA, but the Republic of Liberia.
Thank you for the correction.
Yes, I am seated at the Environmental Protection Agency and coordinate the work of the National Climate Change Steering Committee headed by the President, but because of a busy schedule, the FM, the Finance Minister, is the chair with 2 co-chairs, EPA and FDA. So I'm not altogether staff of the EPA or the Republic of Liberia. Yeah. I'm really delighted to be here. This invitation was extended to Dr. Emmanuel K. Ireja-Paulo, the Executive Director of the EPA. But by coincidence, he asked me to come. When I came here, I asked fully for my invitation. He didn't have one. Even though some months ago, he shared the concept with me and we discussed it. But why my lieutenant, so to speak, would not, because his function, of course, yes, is an auxiliary to the function I perform.
Sorry,
it's okay. I think this is unique because sometimes when the FM was Budget Director General, I have an opportunity to go to South Africa at a time when I was head of the finance department at the EPA, to go for budget training, integrating climate change into national budgeting. At the time, I used to have a very tough time accessing funding from the Ministry of Finance. So I wrote the Minister, the Director General, who is now the FM, to allow 2 staff from the Budget Bureau to go to South Africa for that purpose. And when he was Minister of Finance, I workshop to train staff of the Ministry of Finance in integrating climate change and environmental concern into national budgeting. Talking about mainstreaming climate change into national development planning. It was held somewhere in my 1.9 where the registry is now. So even developing products, I talk about the decks at the Ministry of Finance are one of the facilitators in the camp. So to have this program today, though it appears a coincidence, but I'm really honored to be here to be part of this initiative that we started some long years. So I bring you greetings from Emmanuel King, the Executive Director and CEO of the EPA and the senior management team. And to let you know that what you are doing here is consistent with sustainable development. Sustainable development has 3 legs. I'm not going to go with the other, but one of the legs has to do with environmental management. Sustainable environmental management. In the absence of that leg, like a pillow, you see, if those pillows are not there, you do not have sustainable management. So I will let you know the importance of us being part of this process, because the Environmental Protection Agency pillows are 3 legal instruments that act the management law and the policy. And the mandate says the EPA shall be the principal authority of the management of the environment and shall coordinate, monitor, supervise, and consult with relevant stakeholders on all activities that have to do with environment and the sustainable use of the natural resources of the country. So a pinpointed environmental protection and management, policy, regulation, enforcement, coordination and monitoring, and sustainable resource management and capacity building. So why we should not be here? It's imperative that we do it together. The management of environment involves all, especially so when it has to do with the natural resource management, the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. There's no time that I'm working over the years with the Ministry of Planning and Finance and Development Planning. I've been a happier one other than this thing. Why? People I work with, when they were technicians, they became boss. The madam is here as the Minister of Budget and Development Planning, and the Finance Minister who are working with your Director General and working as the Minister of Finance is indeed thereby as the Minister of Finance. I'm really delighted to work with this institution. So let's talk about coordination that enhances national development planning and sustainable resource management. Money follows plan. Plan does not follow money. Money follows plan. If you fail to plan, you already plan to fail. So I have some parable that I give when I'm teaching or facilitating. I tell people, if you want to work, don't work. If you don't want to work, work. It sounds arrogant, paradoxical, but it's real. If you don't want to work, you work now. You put all your acts together, plan, execute your plan, then your work, the work that awaits you in the future will be reduced. But you still want to work, you will haphazardly work, and the work will still await you. So I urge you all, like the minister put it rightly, it's about time. You are ambassador, you are the technician at this initial stage. Let's work beginning today so we can work tomorrow. There are others that are far ahead of us with budget processes that includes environmental protection and climate change. Budget timing is just a responsible way of identifying resources, allocating it, and tracking what goes to climate change. Sometime I was somewhere and we were presenting, and I look at our budget to see how we have allocated resources to environment and climate change. Besides the pay we take, there were no identifiable traces of direct financing for climate change and environment. They're paying me. If you define climate change or climate finance, it's not just a general development finance. It is finance directed to climate change mitigation, adaptation, and the resilient development thereof. So this is about the time. Let's do it together to ensure that we work today to save ourselves from working tomorrow. Now, how can we do it so that we make sure that we don't work tomorrow? I would have thought, maybe you were constrained with finances. I would have thought this, maybe this is the initial one that other land administrative agencies were going to be here, because they are the paramount problem for you in planning. Because they have their own programs and planning. If they do not understand this and how to develop the activities that align with their dream and aspiration, you will definitely have a challenge in mainstreaming climate change into budgeting. So let this be an initial step, and from here you'll be able to have more of an inclusive one. Our development planning addressing climate change is bordered on few documents. The cardinal one is an NDC, Nationally Determined Contribution. That's the ambitious plan of the government of Liberia to address climate change in the country. That document will be the full, like your everyday tool that you use to see in various sectors how do we address climate change when it comes to energy, agriculture, waste, coastal management, and the rest of it. That's the cardinal document. Another pivotal document has to do with the LTV or LTS, that is our low emission vision. We have developed a vision. The document is at the Ministry of Finance, so that acknowledgement or document can be signed. And then after that, we'll develop the strategy. Then the third important one is our NAP, the National Adaptation Plan. So I urge you to have this document. If you are mainstreaming climate change and doing budget targeting, these are instruments that will inform your judgment and will ensure that what you do is representative of the country and is driving the country view and aspiration when it comes to what we need to do to address climate change. So I'm available. I've been here for a while. I've done the training, and I'm capable of doing it for my own people. I offer myself anytime, let's talk. There are many, other than the few that are at the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, there are others out there that are climate change or climate finance trained that can help us. Because what we do here is for the Republic of Liberia, not a single line administrative agency. Remember, the EPA, the core mandate say we should work in collaboration with all line administrative agencies, especially so the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. So I'm grateful for this, and the senior management team of the EPA where I sit, and on behalf of my chair and the two co-chairs, want to let you know that we stand ready to support the process. Because climate change is very, very real, we cannot. How EPA supports the national budgeting processes? For now, look, from the Least Development Country Fund, $10 million have been approved for adaptation program in the Ministry of Agriculture, for example. I'm not talking, I do not want to mention much of the MMCRP, the Monrovia Metropolitan Resilient Project addressing adaptation, coastal erosion at West Point, and the one in Sino. But one thing that we are doing now, our position, the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, in a very cardinal way is the Green Climate Fund that has served as the focal point requires that we have a accredited entity to implement the Green Climate Fund. Green Climate Fund is the biggest portfolio for implementing and addressing climate change issue when it comes to financing. So our dream in working with the ministry, our whole idea is to position the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning and a bank as the designated accredited entity for the country. So what it requires is for us to work together fiduciarily with who you are putting, because when it comes to managing it, you have a very good track record. But that 10% of both the development agency, for example, comes to the Ministry of Finance, and you can use it to get more technicians, train a lot more to position or to access more funding from the climate finance. The topology of climate finance is increasing by day. It came from 100 billion. The Baku Convention pushed it to 300 billion, and it's projected to move to 1.5 trillion. So the better we position ourselves through this and other area, the better we are positioned to receive climate finance that we can use directly. The institution that bring climate fund and Jeff, Global Environment Facility, LDCF, they are urging for direct access. So you can be Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, and we continue to direct funding to other partners to come to help you. So I say this, let's take note, and let's work together to position the Ministry of Finance to access more funding to address national issues, specifically those that pertain to climate finance that border on mitigation, adaptation, and resilience capacity building. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wampo. So that was the voice of the National Climate Change Secretarial Coordinator of the Republic of Liberia. Okay, thank you very much. So the next here we move to the roles and responsibility of climate integration and financing overseen by the Ministry of Finance. And that will be done by Mr. Foley. So if you really saw hanging heads, we're supposed to do a good photo, but you know, we started a little bit late, so I just wanted you to complete the good photo and proceed. So on that note, I will call Mr. Foley Sibayo, the Senior Policy Advisor on climate change focal point at the Ministry of Finance and Development. Yeah, please take the banner. Yeah, take the photo.
I'm going to put it before so do the presentation now before the group photo.
I will about to do the presentation. I will take the banner and go outside of the photo. You can't do the photo here. Don't go outside of the photo. We are going live. Let's do a presentation. After we can take out the banner and go outside. So it has been agreed upon by the body that we do the group photo before the presentation. Presentation? Oh, okay. They give you a say, anytime the person who bought minister to me, so you don't want to minister, you want to be part of the photo. You can't do it usually.
While we having some telecommunications, and we are settling in that from our IT specialist who turns public investment analyst. They have switched to eventually becoming a climate change expert. Mamebo is on trial. The ones that graduated from STARS and over IT degree. Yeah. Unfortunately, he has taken 5 minutes of the time, and this has also go to the presidency, and that bonus on his job. I want to claim this presentation that will run quickly in 15 minutes. Because many of you are familiar with it. I guess about the role and responsibility of the Climate Integration and Financing Office and the fundamental reasons why we were able to establish it. Okay. Unfortunately, we put it to the presentation to have to set up.
So what's the presentation about? Why do they set up on that?
So let's just go out there to the online. A brief introduction, the changes, the driving forces behind climate change, the rationale for creating the Climate Integration and Financing Office. I will talk based on the legal context, the fundamental principles that underpin the establishment of climate change, Climate Integration and Financing Office. I will give an example of Uganda, what is happening in Uganda. Then I tell you basically the objectives, the vision, the goals of CIFO. The operational strategy, that is the overview of what we intend to be doing. And then the institutional arrangement. And of course, I will end by saying thank you to all of you. So that all of the presenters on today will tell us why it is very important to have us battling climate change. Because climate change is of a developmental concerns that has implication on all of us, the society, our salary, which is economic, and also the environmental landscapes where we live and all of the kind of issues. Based on the implication of climate change, which is compounded by the magnitude that requires in terms of the money we need to combat climate change, and it requires us to sit as individuals to be innovative enough to see how we support interventions in adaptation, mitigation efforts to reduce climate change effects. So the IMF has estimated that it is required for us to reach in 2050, we require 3 trillion to be able to combat most of the climate change issues across the world. Just today, you listened to Mr. Wago when he mentioned that they went to Baku. There was some huge funding being discussed in Baku. The conversation there was about climate financing, how we can finance climate interventions across. He mentioned issue of 100 billion, and then that is just a minute portion of what is 3 trillion that we need to combat climate change from now to 2050. Now Liberia is developing the NDC 3.0, which is most of you will know, called the National Determined Contribution. For now, the one that we have is 2.0. It has expired. But by next month, we're supposed to launch the NDC 3.0. We always have a national development plan. And as part of the national development plan, after 5 years, let's say and develop a new one, we have to develop. So this is like a plan what countries have committed to reduce the emission generally. So no one is forcing you. You say all these things we are doing around the world, climate change has an impact on us in X, Y, Z. So to do X, Y, Z, you will have to say we will be committed to putting 500 million in the budget every time to reduce our pollution. There's some of our commitments. So that document, during the time, we have 490,000 that we needed to be able to achieve our efforts in terms of adaptation, mitigation, or everything related to climate change at the time. Require for climate change adaptation and mitigation actions. So what was asked me one time, he said, so for this particular thing you know what you're conducting, so is a climate finance issue. I said, of course, so we put it in the budget of your sales, it's a climate finance issue. And truth told the story. There's a code, there's a line there that this is captured honor in the national budget that is funding the particular intervention that we're having on today. So this is the simplest definition we can give for anyone at the law school. You will say layman to understand the context of climate finance. So the dynamics of climate change, there are two: the impact and then the drama behind it. So who are those that climate change directly impact? We have the vulnerable groups. You know them, lower income communities, people of color, the drama behind climate change activities, emission for high income countries. So I was having a conversation with the current special envoy for climate change appointed by the president. She's the CEO, former agriculture minister, Jenny Cooper. And there's some money with Norway. I don't know where the money from Norway. I don't know you're here, but everybody get FDA before the rest of it. So there's a chunk of money sitting there somewhere that some of the countries just want to give and then preserve your forest. Don't do certain things with it, get this money, do other things and stuff like that. So, but then there's also the issue of sustainable livelihood. And you know, what is the other context of maybe stopping from doing, my forest, not to cut in, not to do other things, how do other people survive? So, why am I setting this example for Norway? Norway is a polluter as well, like America. And high income countries, they get industries, they have all the kind of thing, and then they pollute the environment. Liberia is very lucky to have a vast forest that can keep most of the pollution and save the world. So countries are willing to give us money to not cut our forest. So these emissions come from high income countries like Norway, America, Russia, China, and the rest of it. So the impact will be some of us that we don't want to enjoy Friday, and not knowing that the smoke from the vehicles while we're drinking our beer along the road can impact us. And but then big guys are fixing the cars and sending it down to us. And most of them, some of these things come from those countries. What is the reason behind the integration of climate change into development planning? Why are we establishing the Climate Integration Financing Office? So like Robert Jones, Sierra Leone. In Sierra Leone, there's a division of climate finance. In Rwanda, there's a division of climate finance. In Ghana, there's a division. In Kenya, of course, and Uganda, they have. For Uganda, they have a very big department. It's the Dutch before the Ministry of Finance, like before, the Ministry of Finance will have unlike any other RRTC across the globe on our side. So in Uganda, there's a big building that you have for entirely climate finance activities. So climate finance is not because we want to do it at Ministry of Finance or because someone likes to want to get big it. It is imperative. It is a revolution across Africa. Other countries are doing it. I can remember when in Marrakech in 2023 when the Minister had to represent Minister 12 back then, the head for the V20 countries was the Minister of Ghana. At that meeting, he informed us that all of the countries in Africa have been asked to establish climate finance unit at the Ministry of Finance and Development. When we came back, I had to work with Scarlett Ben at the time. He was director who left the Ministry of Finance and went to support his brothers in America and USA after giving him Harvard education. I said, let's structure the context. But Scarlett Ben has already had idea of what he wanted to do initially, so we worked on the concept note. We framed it and we will have a frame it and we submitted it. It took time when the Obama came before we had it to be established. But this is a long-standing something. This just didn't happen in course. So sometimes when I hear people talking, they say, I don't know the history behind it. So today my brother is also here to support me because he's an institutional person of it. He knows the history and he knows how we went through it to get it to some extent to where we are today. So the fundamental underpinnings of the establishment. So there's a World Country report that was developed in 2024. I had a privilege and honor to work with a consultant, but then now he sits in Pakistan. So as part of that report, sometimes when you do policy document, you know the context of which the country is supposed to proceed to. So you frame the document based on what your intentions are as a country. So because we have come from Marrakech, Morocco, we have conversations there, we know what it is. And then he was in Morocco as well, went to the World Bank in Washington. So there were recommendations within it that we should mainstream climate change considerations within development planning and budgeting process. So when things are on the board, it means that you go by it. So as part of the discussions of what we report recommends that we should establish this unit. At the Central Bank of Liberia, they have the climate change desk there. It's headed by coming from EMU, the Ghana. I got something. The guy from EMU from Central Bank. He has it. So there's a funding as well there. So we have that. So a revolution is taking place. So as Central Bank of Liberia, we have that establishment. A Ministry of Finance is visible enough to some extent we have it there based on the recommendation in that report. The arrest agenda also talks about mobilizing resources for the implementation of that agenda. Climate finance is a major source of funding to doing all of the things that are in the implementation. It is highly ambitious to say that we need 8 billion, 8.3 billion to implement the arrest agenda over the period of 5 years. How do we do that? We have to be creative, think outside the box, not only to be taxing people for coming with their cars that is 15 years old, they can bring it. How will you do that? And how will someone that's a school car? We can also think outside the box, and climate financing is a major source to help the implementation of the national development plan. MLDP, being the custodian of Liberia's development plan processes, has an imperative to be able to lead all development efforts. So it is against that backdrop we were able to establish the Climate Integration Financing Office in order to be able to mainstream climate change into our national development planning and our budget. So with the national development planning, we were able to do the National Development Plan as a climate smart one. Today, in the history of Liberia, is the very first time to have an entire chapter dedicated to climate change activities. County Development Agenda, Honor C4, to do Conservation International and support for the NDC partnership in Germany, were able to make the County Development Agenda, the 15 County Development Agenda climate smart. So to a larger extent, we have been able to mainstream climate change into our national development frameworks. With the budget, this is the first stage of the process. We want to make it climate smart. So we are starting with climate budget target, and the minister said, because the pioneer ambassadors moving forward. Mr. Wabo said we should have invited the other marks into this room to see what we go for, but we cannot invite them at this stage because this is very new to most of us, and then we need to know it first. We need to have other trainings for ourselves, learn it, then before we can go it out. So today is an introduction. That's what she said in her speech. There's an exception of many of our different training. So you will have the opportunity to listen to the folks, ask them questions that you have to ask, get it, we'll look for funding, and then we'll be able to do more of this training before we roll it out to the other max. But for now, it is just an introduction, and you are pioneer of this effort. So Uganda, like I said, we have a good example of what it is. Uganda has the NDC, like I mentioned, and they have what they call the Green Growth Development Strategy. And as part of those framework, they also require money to support this development framework in their country. So, like Liberia, we needed 490,000 for the NDC. That's a 500,000 for the NDC 2.0 implementation. Uganda as a country needed 28.1 billion. And 15% of that money was to be sourced domestically, while 18% has been intended to talk to external partners to see how they support them. 28.1 billion to do the climate interventions in Uganda, while Liberia only needed 400,000. If we launch the NDC 3.0, the 500,000 might likely increase to 1 million or 1.5 million, I don't know. But then we need to talk to external partners. So when Mr. Wabo was saying something about we need designated authorities, like 10% of some of this money that come. They don't give the money directly to government entities. They will give the money like most of my colleagues are working with me on the Conservation International Project. The money from our conservation fund will manage it. But there's a guy that Nicholas knows very well called New to give our own money and rest of it, the will have some people do the kind of thing. When I want to come to budget conservation fund, we just want to do the thing. But because we're not nationally designated, we're not reached that accreditation level to be able to hold the money so they can give us the money at this stage. So when we get to that level, maybe the money just comes directly to our implementation. This project is going to Ministry of Finance. Ministry of Finance is the one giving the money. King is not here. See, King is running after all of the people working to show that he can send it to us for Friday. So that's the intervention one. When the same money comes directly to us, so Uganda, like I said, need that money, and then because they needed to establish a designated and dedicated unit called the Climate Finance Division of Department that is responsible to go out there and look for the funding towards all of the climate change interventions within Uganda, owing to 28.1 billion. So that's an example. Can I go to the next slide? So with that narrative, it is summarized in a graph, in a diagram. So 28.1 billion, like I said here, adaptations require 17.7 billion, mitigation require 10.3 billion, and cross-cutting issues, like they will say, gender and cross-cutting issue requires 0.1 billion. So out of the 100%, you see 63% goes to adaptation, 36% goes to mitigation, 0.4% goes to cross-cutting issue. Out of the 28 billion that Uganda require, this is how it is shared in Uganda. So the objective generally for the Climate Integration Financing Office is just to bridge the gap between climate change concerns and our development planning decisions that we normally are supposed to make. And then that particularly includes mainstream, looking at our documents that we're writing them. Is this climate sensitive? How do we address the issue of the erosion? How do we address the issue of West Point? Can we do the MCRP, the revetment project? I was about to represent Liberia case without revetment projects in Mauritius. And then there's a unique situation for Liberia and many countries want like that, where it really rocks to block the water from that. So I was asked actually to present on Liberia own case study. And there are some questions that were asked very interesting because how recently I remember, when you're in a different country, you have to see, so the people see the plane looking bar off, and I want to tell them I'm Monrovia. I say, you can see the top building behind, when you take picture of Westwood, there's Dugon. So I see one of the location and I say, this is not Monrovia actually. The way you see that top building, this is where Monrovia is. I will show the idea small because the historical context for where we came from and where we are now, when I started the native basis, it was bad, but at the end of the presentation, they took care of something that they were adapted to the country because another country, somewhere in, I don't know, like remember TRV, TVU, those kind of countries, they needed that kind of thing. So when we think about how we do our development planning, owing to the fact that climate change is real and we need to do adaptation and mitigation efforts realistically to be able to combat climate actions, these are how we should think in terms of our policy documents when we're writing them. So mainstream climate change, secure funding for external partners. That's why the aid management is always important. The aid management unit is always important to partner with us because it is through them we get grants and other aid modalities settled to be able to enhance this effort. So the vision is to establish a robust integrated framework that drives climate resilience and sustainability by embedding climate change considerations into our national framework. The key aspects are strengthening national capacity like we're doing on today, facilitating sustainable inclusive economic growth and Liberia climate change consideration, having context with EPA, bringing them on board, discussing with FDA, all of the stakeholders involved in climate change issues to get them on board, and then how we address issues sustainably from our angle of climate change. So these are the 4 goals. Institutionalizing and making it like having C4 administrative finance, working with new partners in a different department, ensuring that all of our policy documents, last time we were talking to the government debt management, I mean, RCT on the debt strategy to see whether it's climate sensitive, talking with folks on CAG to see whether it's climate change sensitive, with the division of development planning, the budget division, we should institutionalize climate change activity across the entire departments in our ministry as a whole. We should be able to look for resources, like I just mentioned, about external resources with the division. That's why I always try to work with Assistant Minister Alice Bono, who is very helpful on this journey at the ministry. They always have Levio to come to most of our meetings because they are critically our partner to resource mobilization efforts. Fostering stakeholder consultations, collaborations with EPA, FDA, the private sector is part of our responsibility at CFO. Promoting sustainable development, aligning our national framework, like I said, with our climate change activities, both nationally and globally, getting best practices across the world. On today, the main reason under the Department of Budget Development Planning is that climate change is not an environmental issue in totality. It is more of like a developmental concern, like the first slide that I showed in the introduction. So the Department of Development Planning is the department that leads on Liberia's national development effort. So if climate change is a developmental concern, it is therefore our concern to have it on a Department of Budget Development Planning. Then also, the function is actually the mainstream climate change considerations into our national development plan. So one of the reasons why it has to be there. Also, it's also the mainstream climate change considerations in the national budget. That's the reason why you're here. So one more main reason also is in the department. With additional responsibility to liaise with the Department of Economic Management to be able to do resource mobilization effort for climate resilient projects. So that is a coordination approach that all of us in the Ministry of Finance usually have to work along with different departments to be able to achieve a goal. So those are the reasons why it is placed one of them. So the key activities, like I mentioned, policy integration, capacity building, developing financial mechanism, having stakeholder engagement, and of course, when you do all of these things, there should be reason to monitor your results at the end of the day to know where you stand, how you gauge your performance moving forward. Next slide. So when we do all of these things, what are the expected outcomes? At the end of the day, we should have increased capacity, we should have people knowledgeable about climate change within the ministry and also outside the ministry. We should be able to improve our stakeholder coordination. We should be able to accelerate access to international and domestic climate financing across. How we get the money, we should be able to do that to gain the 8.3 billion for the implementation of the National Development Plan. We should be able to enhance integration of climate change into our national planning and budgeting process, and then we should be able to align our efforts with best practices across the globe. So when that is done, then this is how we gauge our effort. This is how we know we are being able to achieve some of these activities. The percentage of the national budget that reflects climate change considerations. Now we are here today as a part phase to have the budget being climate sensitive. One day technical workshop is not very reasonable enough to doing it, but it's an exceptional one to give an introduction to the process. So we have to do more to be able to understand how to make it something. So when you see the budget, national budget, Mr. Waba was saying, when you look in the budget, you couldn't see anything, but we are getting salary as the head of the National Climate Change Secretariat. But what do we have as far as going to climate change interventions in totality? What percentage of the budget goes there? We should be able to capture that. We should be able to know the volume of climate finance being mobilized annually. Some people just say they give money to water aid, they give money to wash commission. But we should know at the end of it, to the national budget say 15%, for example, went to climate change this year, we should know. At the end of the year, we can say, okay, annually, apart from the national budget, what you said used to give or what the other company gave, all the money, how much? If we get 15 million, we should be able to know at the end of it. Number of capacity building initiatives conducted some of these. Increased climate resilient projects implemented. The only one, like say for example, the Monrovia Metropolitan project that we're talking about, the coastal defense project in Sino and also Westman, we should be able to know the number of projects we are doing in terms of climate change mitigation and adaptation. We should have a feedback mechanism to know what we are doing better and not. So these are the metrics to be able to track our progress and our performance moving forward. So there are different roles of stakeholders. So the government, at the Ministry of Finance, the EPA, FDA, all of them serve as a leader in the climate finance policy and governance sphere. They should be able to provide leadership towards that. Development partners should be able to provide us technical support and financial support to enhance our climate financing assets. These are the things we intend. Private sector, we should be able to talk to them so that they can invest in climate change activities. So for example, solar energy, maybe we reduce taxes on them, maybe it's become, we have a tax break or something. Like when you are bringing solar energy into the country as a company, it is free. So we move into climate change activities. So how do we discuss the private sector to be able to help us in climate change activities? Private sector has a role to play. So we encourage them to invest in those activities. Civil society usually should be able to advocate. So the advocacy role in terms of how people are aware of the financing, what are the benefits that are accrued when we do climate change issues, what are the short-term, long-term benefits, and then how is cost of transparency, how much money goes there, how much money didn't go, how we account for them. Civil society has a role to play in that effort. And then research institutions like the University of Liberia, right? They should be able to play a particular role to generate knowledge on some of these issues. On that note, I would like to say, for a fair reason, that the establishment of Climate Integration Financing Office is a transformative step towards integrating climate resilience into Liberia's development agenda. By fostering partnership review, enhancing our institutional capacity that we're doing on today, and mobilizing the resources that we intend to do and we're supposed to be doing, and then C4 will definitely drive sustainable growth and safeguard future generations against climate change. On that note, if I satisfy your curiosity, let us say thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fode Bayo. That was a powerful presentation. I want to say thank you, very insightful. We learned a lot from the presentation. Earlier on you say we are familiar with it, but every time you present, you bring new ideas and new things. So I want to say thank you very much. Without much ado, on our agenda, I would like to call Mr. Benedict Harrison, the head of the Ministerial Delivery Unit in the Office of the Minister of Finance and Development Planning, to do an overview of climate budget type concepts and global best practice.
Good morning to all. So, while we are with the protection of the presentation, I think this is really one of the most exciting moments because, like Fode mentioned, I was technically like the person who gave birth to this idea because I started doing this since 2013. When I had my first consultancy to do carbon costing. And after I returned from study, and I started actually exploring the possibilities of seeing how we could leverage on the climate potential at the Ministry of Finance. So that was an ongoing thing. Sometimes you have the idea, but who do you sell your idea to? So it was difficult to get it going through. But I did not waver because I knew in the end there would be someone who would give you an ear. And fortunately for me, I did multiple concept notes around it. And someone would say you got frustrated. And I did not get frustrated. I was inspired to just move on. And when I was leaving the Ministry of Finance, the budget minister and I had a conversation, and she sent me over the Fode, and I would talk about it. And I left. Graciously I came back, and I came and met at least a semblance of the idea that I had about having a climate related unit at the Ministry of Finance. So I told him thank you. At least sometimes you theorize and someone apply the theory for you. So I theorized the whole thing and he applied. So I call him, most times I tell you are the applied mechanics. I'm the thinker like that. But sometimes it's good to just know exactly what it is. And you can have different thoughts, but it gets implemented differently. At the time, we had a thought. When I had a thought, it was practically about just when we did the PRS, we did not actually concern ourselves with climate integration and other stuff and things. The way it came up, partially, but was not a major consideration at the time. We came the PAPD. The PAPD was done, published, discussed. Before the thought of a climate came in. When the thought of a climate came in at the time, it was just about the time when we had the COVID situation. We had a COVID situation and were being instructed to do the COVID economic recovery plan. And so we thought about it and we shared that with the development planning people. It came up. So luckily it got integrated and partially into the PAPD. But it was mostly integrated or seen more in the COVID recovery plan that we did. And I think that was actually a model that the EU had to send to other African countries to model after what we did. And that document was actually done solely by Ministry of Finance staff. There was no consulting. Because it's one argument of what we made of people that we have the capacity in the ministry to do a lot. It is just about putting it together and just the same as you mobilize resources. Human capital is a resource. the form and manner in which you mobilize them will bring out the best output. Yeah, climate finance office integration, climate integration finance office is good, but you know, we still have some work to do with this, and we still have some work to do with it because I still see the planning component now coming out strong, because it should be like Mr. Wako said, money follow plan. Okay, the plan does not follow the money. So I was sharing with him the other time that I think we should have climate planning and finance and secretariat. There are different ways you plan for climate, and there are different ways you finance and activities that you plan for under climate. It is that the same way that you finance any regular development issue. Because climate-related issues, they are complex, and sometimes they become so, argumentative. People have different perspectives. So I don't want to waste your time, but the financing component of this, what I think is, he gave some statistics, which I will come to later, about, the amount of money we have to spend. And we had an NDC 2.0, which expires. He made mention of transition into the NDC 3.0. But the question here is, and there where you see, the mismatch between the plan and the finance. The question here is, if we are transitioning from 2.0 to 3.0, what have we achieved? What have we achieved? So we should be able to catalog in a more quantitative form to show that, okay, at the time where at 2.0, significantly we're able to mobilize, say, 50% of the anticipated amount we had. And these were the activities that the amount we raised and help us to implement. We are yet to see that, but again, we are in transition. But there's one thing I want to say. We need to begin to shift a little bit from sole reliance on donor financing when it comes to our climate issue. We need to reduce our reliance. We need to do that. While it's true, like we said, the climate impact was mostly done by high-income countries, developed countries. So they temper with, as a result, emission issues. Yeah, and that affected us. The ripple effect comes to us. But the good thing is, we did not temper much, or we have not tempered much with our climate, with our vegetation. The question we should be asking ourselves, how can we leverage on the existing vegetation or climate protection that we have to maximize more or to mobilize more, most times I call it domestic climate revenue mobilization. It has to be different. How can we do that? So that is the thought that I've been thinking mostly, we forget about the 100+ billion, all the agreement, the Paris people, the Baku people are saying. I was shocked, Mr. Baba. I was advocating for you to start in Baku, and then when they took the climate stuff in Baku, they are actually drilling. They into so much drilling, they're doing a lot of carbon, emission, they're emitting a lot. So the question I was asking is, what would actually be the position of the president or the prime minister to talk to the people, to tell them to stop while your actions are currently emitting a lot? They tell you some of the complexity associated or surround this whole subject. So I don't want to bore you much. I think we can proceed. So we'll be looking at what the numbers say, and we want to look at it mostly from the perspective of public awareness and perception. So we have the Afro barometer and some little statistics. Because for me, I like to present the climate issue from the people's perspective. And you can give people emission statistics, you give them this, you give them this. It doesn't speak to the emotion of people. But if you listen to the voices, then they can move you voices can move authorities more than non-voices. And beyond the voices are situations, complex situation or emotional situation, but those situations has to be, they all have to be moved by voices. So it tells you the level of the strength in communication. So we'll be talking about why it is, climate budget target, why it matters, to look at benefits, some classic example in our context as Liberia. Then we also want to look at gaps from Liberia's perspective. Institutional arrangement, fully emphasize on local. I'm not going to present all these things, giving you more like an overview. Then we have key linkages. How do they link from one document to another? Because this thing is integrated. It's integrated. It's not like a mutually exclusive. Sometimes stuff you gotta do. So, what are some of the tools that support the transition? If you want to transition, what are some of the tools you can leverage on? Then we look at some practical rollout. One global case as a case study, then we probably will have a call to action. Yeah. So climate budget target, setting the stage. So we're going to set the stage by looking at the people's voices. So when you look at this Afro barometer, it says a lot. And, relative to what the people say. So you see that this was a survey conducted from Liberians. So Liberians are saying here in terms of climate change in Liberia, right? So Liberians are not only aware of climate change, they are demanding actions. So this is not like saying the policymaker or the president is drafting it. This is the voice, or these are the voices of Liberians, our own people. They are saying to us that they are demanding action. It is not just the effect, but they want government to take action. They want other institutions or other players to take action. So about 61% have heard about what is called, from the sample size that we use, 61% made mention of hearing about climate change. So while it's true, we still have something like 31, 39%, that still don't know, but that's a huge and significant amount that is still left out of knowing exactly what climate change is. So among the 68%, among that, 68% of the 61% emphasize that it is making life worse. Emphasize that it's making life worse. And 85% believe that government must take action. So out of the 61% that made mention of it, 85% of that 61% is telling us that government should take action. Okay. So because you need to find something that will drive, that will make you to move. It is, like I said, voices of situation can make policy makers to move. So you need to find something that will drive them. So for the 5% have noticed more worse severe flaws, and we've seen it emanate around us now during the rainy days. And 37% have noticed more severe drought. But the question here is, who should do more? The people are asking. This is what they want. But who should do more? The statistic is telling us that 74% say government should do more. Okay. 63% saying the businesses and industries should also do more. 62% saying developed countries. 49% say citizens. So we come to this. Look at the 62%. The 62% goes back to what I was saying, that we need to take it domestically. We should not rely more on international stuff and things. Okay? So the citizens are saying, yeah, they want government to handle it more. So you see the ranking there is, it is more geared and tailored towards government intervention. Okay? So what I'm saying that there has now been clear that there is a mandate. From the statistics, you can see that there is a mandate. And who gave mandate? The people gave mandate to government. Okay. And the mandate is clear there. So the mandate is not just about budgeting. See, climate budgeting isn't optional. They don't want. It is not an option they are giving to government, because city releases flaws everywhere. It's not an option that people giving to government. No, you need to build drainages. You need to do a lot. So this is no option. This is what the people expect from these statistics that we see that we are reading here. And so we want to close this down and move to what the subject is. So from the statistics, I want you to just put yourself in a frame to be able to link, because I try how to link and every subject from one slide to the next. But I want you to see how it flows, the integration of it. So we have that when you refer the statistics, and the question here is, how do we go about as government to intervene, since in fact the people have asked us that they expect government to take more responsibility. So before we even go down, Foley has proposed that climate budget tagging is one of the many ways we can go forward. Okay, we'll say fine, let us look at it. Because we are seeing it in the context of PFM, Public Financial Management. So here we say, the CBT is actually a public financial management tool. And we can see as PFM 2. And what it does is, it helps us to identify and classify, track, tag, and link. You see the classification, Mr. Wabo made mention of, the bigger the budget, they could actually see how much will be spent on climate. The reality here is, there are a lot of money being spent on climate. But because we are not utilizing the proper classification, we are not classifying it properly. If you don't classify properly, it will appear more like you are not doing anything. But we are doing things. And so the CBT is going to actually help us to be able to identify those expenditures, those climate-related expenditures that we want to spend on, or we should be taking up on. And we identify them, we properly classify them. So once you classify it, it becomes easy to track. Okay, when you track it, the moment you track, then you can begin in the subsequent years. You can begin to tag them to different pillars across the development and document. Now, then you have to link them, and linking them in this context that we talked about, that I made mention first, that finances follow plan, and this is why you see here. When you tag them, the next thing you want to do now is to link them. Linking them means connecting budgetary allocation to them, to those ones that you have identified and tagged. So this is just a simplistic way of trying to place it, and we don't want to make it academic or theoretical. So this is more practical. But go back. Sometimes things can get people moved. And for me, I love to use quotations and doing presentations. So to this, what I feel and what this says to me is one of the famous quotes that Peter Drucker he did mention of, and what gets measured gets managed. If you cannot measure anything, you can't manage anything. Management, you need to measure something. We all have carrying capacity. We all have carrying capacity. You sometimes in building state capability, most times we refer to it as premature load bearing. When you carry all, and you realize that sometimes some of the load you carry, you are premature to carry them because you have not measured them. So you are just bearing the load as a premature carrier. Yeah. So go to the next. So why this matters? Why it really matters? In the context, I will begin by saying climate change is just not an environmental issue like Foley mentioned. It is just that. And it is a budgeting issue. You can have the beautiful plan, you can do all the plan, you identify everything, if you cannot budget them properly, there's no way you're going to feel the impact or see the impact. It's just going to be another, big document sitting around, move around, okay, we got this, we got this, we got that, we got that. So don't see it mostly from an environmental perspective. And that is the reason I try to rested this presentation mostly on the PFM bills. So why it matters? Mr. Wabo talked about the NDC, National Determinant Contribution. So we are migrating.